Hello, welcome to the PowerShell community call. Apologies for being a couple minutes late here. We'll get started in just a minute. Definitely. Just a couple more people to trickle in here before we get started. Also see if my dock will work, so my mic will work. Probably help if it was turned on.
Jeff Hicks is asking if you can use a light theme during the call. It's hard to read the dark theme, I guess.
It's a great point. It's one no one's ever raised before, and it's probably driven people crazy for a while. So thank you for pointing that. Awesome. We'll get started in one more minute here. Couple more folks trickle in. We do have 21 attendees already. Take it in, old man. Jeff, it's I think everyone's readability there. Yay on the light theme. Yes, that's no problem. All right, let's get into it. So welcome again, PowerShell community call for November 2020. It's hard to believe that we're already 11 months through the year, but here we are, and we're actually already GA'd another PowerShell. So this went out last week. It is a bit of a community-oriented release, as we noted in the blog post. So it was focused largely on smaller feature enhancements and bug fixes, to maintain a lot of the compatibility with existing 7.0. We also had kind of a shorter time period between 7.0 and 7.1 than we're going to have for releases going forward, because 7.0 did take a little bit longer to get out than we expected. So 7.0 shipping in March to our first RC was in September. So really just that March to September period for new features, but we are already jumping in head first to stuff for 7.2. You'll probably see some sort of roadmap or pre-planning blog over the course of the next month or two. I can't guarantee that's going to be out before the new year, but as we go into previews, that'll start to show up. But thank you to everyone that contributed on the 7.1 release. It's been largely successful, barring anything that anybody raises here. We haven't seen any major problems with it. Nobody's come back and said that the GA, had any big issues. One of the big things to note here is that this is the first GA release of PowerShell available on the Microsoft Store. So that's somewhere where you can just pop over to the store, type in PowerShell, and find it side by side with the preview version. So you can have both of those installed. They'll have separate icons. There is still one or two smaller known issues with the Microsoft Store edition. Largely that there's some stuff with the PowerShell config and PS Home that you can't get access to, but we are working on some of those things. There are some partial workarounds for a lot of those, so you'll find those in issues and in documentation depending on what it is. But largely we think this is going to help deployments via SCCM, Intune, anything that integrates with the Microsoft Store, and will also just help keep your dev machines up to date with auto updating and that sort of thing. So largely very positive progress. Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add here on the GA release?
No, I think the only thing is just again, just a big thank you to all the community members and our community maintainer, Ilya. There's a lot of work that was involved by you folks. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And sorry for that. I clicked the wrong thing there, but dragged me over to another virtual desktop. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Awesome. So PowerShell 7.2 preview. Let's talk about this. So this actually already went out. Was this yesterday? Yesterday was kind of a blur of meetings.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning. Yeah. And so this is a lot of the includes a lot of the contributions that couldn't go in because of RCs. There's some of these that get backed up. This happens with preview releases where we have sort of a backup of PRs that have gone into master, but that aren't going to go out in the 7.1 RC or GA releases. So you'll see that there's already some good improvements there. I think in particular, there was some stuff around the JSON depth that I think people were really looking for. And so, as well as some stuff around PWSH-question, the SSL verification checks for WSMan on non-Windows hosts. So, there's a lot of little just sort of, smaller problems that we've gotten fixed already here. But, I think you're going to see, hopefully, a lot of the features that we plan on shipping into PowerShell starting off very early in an experimental phase. We want to take kind of the first half of the 7.2 milestone to, add a lot of these features so that we can continue to refine them and ultimately make a more informed decision about whether or not they need to remain experimental in 7.2 or if they're, shipping features. So, we're going to try and get to those as soon as we can here. But definitely, if you're already bored of the 7.1 release, you can pick this up. And again, this ships out to the store as well for those of you on Windows. Steve, you want to throw in anything there as well?
Yeah. So I just want to add, we try to make sure the previous 7.2 went out shortly after GA, so that the folks that are on the preview channel don't get left behind, if you will, because they're getting old bits, because 7.1 GA would have newer code. So this kind of fulfills that, and we want to kind of keep this going forward. So for those of you that help us give us feedback on the previews, want to make sure you're always on the latest, hopefully on a monthly cadence with the latest codes, and continue to give us that feedback so we can get those addressed before we enter a release candidate phase where the bar does go up. And then we have to be more careful what code change we want to take to avoid any regressions, which is why when we hit an RC for 7.1, that we keep at minimal the code changes, and then all the real big changes are pushed to 7.2. One other thing to mention, that 7.2 preview 1 is still on .NET 5. We'll be switching to .NET 6 as soon as they have a release available, which is not expected till next year. So if we, assuming we have a 7.2 preview 2 in December, which is likely to happen unless a bunch of the team is on vacation, that will probably still be on .NET 5, but we'll continue to make releases as code gets introduced into our master branch. And speaking of branches, we have no immediate plans to change our master branch on PowerShell repo to Maine at this point. We're still waiting on tooling to be completed because it is very disruptive to our contributors, but longer term, we do plan to move all of our repos to Maine. No ETA when that will happen. Smaller repos, as they're new, as new repos get introduced, those will just default to Maine automatically. So. And as Joey mentioned, we'll probably have a blog post about what we're planning to do as a team on 7.2 timeframe, probably not until early next calendar year.
Great. We want to go down to, we've got the update on the Updatable help pipeline. You can go ahead and start there.
Hey, thanks, Joey. Yeah, hi, everyone. I wanted to update you on our Updatable help pipeline. Now, what this really means is you've all experienced this problem, where if you're working in the console or the terminal and you're looking up help for a commandlet or something, you may have noticed that the help isn't up to date, even if you've run the update help commandlet. So you've gone to the web, looked at the web, and gotten the information that you've needed. Now, the interesting side note to this is our docs guy, Sean Wheeler, spends a lot of time working with the community to update the web pages so that you have updatable help on the web, but it hasn't made it to your system. Well, today, fortunately, that problem has been fixed. So now we have a working updatable help pipeline. And the exciting news about this is just recently, in the last couple of weeks, Sean and I have gone through and dog fooded all of the PowerShell doc sets. So all PowerShell versions are now on this updatable pipeline. So PowerShell version, Windows PowerShell version 5.1, PowerShell 6, 7.0, 7.1, and starting yesterday, PowerShell Preview 7.2, the docs are now updatable, which means when you run update help, you will get updatable help onto your local system for the PowerShell core commandlets. Now, we're not done. So we did PowerShell and we got that working on this updatable help pipeline, but we know that just having those core commandlets updated, that's only solving part of that problem. So Sean and I are going out and we're reaching out to the different teams, starting with SCCM and then moving on to Office and Windows. And we'll be working with those teams to get their doc sets and repos onto the new updatable help pipeline so that fortunately, hopefully going forward in the future, we can get all of those great Microsoft tools that you're used to using will get updatable help locally now. So thanks for your patience, and I'm so glad to be able to say that we have an end in sight.
Two notes I want to add there. You need to do update help -force because we're still working on the versioning. So if you don't do -force, it won't see that there's a newer version available, but force will force it to download. The other thing is there's the one outstanding issue with PS Readline I blogged about a week or so ago, and that has to do with PS Readline changed its name in the 2.0 release a while back, and so all the updated help content for PS Readline uses the new uppercase L in Readline, and for Windows PowerShell or systems that have the old PS Readline, it'll fail to download, and the blog explains how to work around that. Basically, you just need to rename the PS Readline module folder to have the uppercase L. But yeah, those are the two caveats.
Hey, Sean, thanks for those adding those in. And by the way, thanks for all the help with the pipeline.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that update. I am seriously excited. I think the reality is a ton of these docs have been well maintained online. Docs.microsoft.com has been a fantastic experience, but it's going to be really great to have all those available now in your own console on your local box. Sydney and Paul, we've got some latest updates on secret management and secret store previews. You want to hop in there?
Yeah, sure. So earlier this week, we released another preview version of both Secret Management and Secret Store. So that's Preview 6 for Secret Management and Preview 4 for Secret Store. The focus of these preview releases was really around improving the compatibility with Windows PowerShell. And it also included a couple of user experience fixes, particularly around unregistering secret vaults. I'll add that I've seen some really great sort of banter on Twitter lately around various folks teaming up together to build extension vaults. So that's really awesome. I'd love to see that. I think two other questions that frequently come up around these modules. First would be, when will the update to the Azure Key Vault extension vault be available? And we have had discussions with the Azure Key Vault team as recently as this week around the fixes that they're making there. So I expect to see that coming relatively soon down the pipeline. The other question is, when will this module be available as GA? And I am hoping very soon for that as well, but don't have an exact ETA for that either. Paul, I don't know if there's anything I might have missed that you want to add in there.
No, I think that pretty well covers it. This preview release was pretty small. The biggest thing we wanted to fix was the Windows PowerShell compatibility.
Awesome. Thank you folks so much. So we've got the PowerShell Gallery update next.
Does Amber want to talk about it, or?
I can start, and then maybe Amber wants to fill in too. Sure. We can add that. So I guess since it is mid November now, we actually haven't had a community call since we did have a pretty major outage of the PowerShell Gallery, which occurred on the evening of October 29th and extended into the day on October 30th in Pacific time. This outage was sort of root caused back to some of the statistics issues that we had been seeing for the previous few weeks, which, as we mentioned before, do have to do with scale issues that the gallery wasn't necessarily designed to have. So this is in some ways a great problem to have. The gallery is so popular now that it's kind of outgrown some of its design. As we were making updates to fix these statistics issues, we did see an error occur that caused very high DTU and CPU, which caused a high utilization of our cloud services, and inversely made the gallery totally unavailable, causing a complete outage for a number of hours. We are working on getting out that public post-mortem as we continue to finish up the statistics issues there. But we have a ton of learnings from this outage. I think one of our biggest takeaways was just how important the gallery is to so many of our users. So that was great feedback for us to know that this is something we definitely want to investigate, or invest in the stability and performance of going forward. So look forward to the full details in the coming postmortem there. For an update on the statistics issues, if you go to any particular package statistics, so any particular module page, you'll see the statistics of that module on that page, and those are restored at this point. There was a period that we were the statistics were never recorded for, so we were unable to restore from that period. But in general, those statistics are as restored as they will be. Unfortunately, we haven't finished the restore on the aggregated statistics. So if you do check the statistics page on the gallery, it's still blank, but we're hoping to have that back up very soon. I think that's my sort of summary of everything, but certainly Amber, Tyler, anyone else, if you have something that I might have missed or incorrectly said, that would be great.
I think you about covered it, Sydney.
Awesome. Yeah, it's obviously we don't like to go through any period of significant downtime like that, but as Sydney said, I think the silver lining here is that we learned a ton about how to handle outages like this, just who's using all of these the PowerShell gallery via a bunch of different services, and we definitely have a lot of visibility from a lot of angles within the company now on just how important the PowerShell gallery is to so many folks. So you'll definitely see that reliability improve. I think it's also worth noting that You know, this was sort of a, you know, we were victims of our own success here, and that you know, despite having run the gallery for many years, this is really the first significant outage that we've seen for any length of time. So, you know, it's unfortunately, you know, eventually lightning has to strike, but you know, we're glad that we have a good handle on it now, and we're moving forward to just get stronger. So thank you guys so much. VS Code extension stability. Who's taking on this one?
Rob, are you on the call? Or are you?
I'm here.
You want to talk about just maybe some of the details and what's going on?
Sure. I think we've discussed this before. I think that it's sort of come up recently because there have been some Twitter threads about it, but effectively the PowerShell extension for VS Code has quite a complicated architecture. It's forced to have that because of expectations about how context is shared between the integrated console and the rest of the editor, in particular IntelliSense and things like that. Basically, because of the way PowerShell works, everything must be shared in one run space, which means in one thread, which means that we have to be pretty clever about how we manage what's running on that thread at any one time. And that sort of worked, you know, well initially, but then with the integration of PS Readline into the extension, that added a new dimension of complexity to handle because PS Readline has to run PowerShell, and that sort of introduced latent issues that sort of weren't obvious in the beginning, but as time went on became, well, initially they were just difficult to understand. You know, it was clear that people were experiencing issues, but it wasn't clear why, because they were the kinds of things that only emerged in threaded scenarios. You know, they're very difficult to reproduce. They were often very specific to particular environments. And in fact, even today, we struggle to reproduce a lot of them at all across most of our own environments. But we've identified, you know, what the issue is. And in fact, I've already spent probably a couple of months working on the solution, the fix, which is basically a total re-implementation of the way the PowerShell extension for VS Code runs PowerShell or manages PowerShell within itself. But there's some remaining work to do in terms of integrating things back in, because it's not a fix that can be incrementalized easily. The change means that we have to rewire the terminal, the debugger, remoting, pretty much anything that, you know, would normally occur in PowerShell. And so we can't launch it half-baked. And working across that and a couple of other projects, I've had to sort of context switch in and out of it. But we're pretty close to having something that we can put into the preview extension to validate that that it is, you know, that it works, that it's fit for purpose, and that there aren't any sort of corner cases that we've missed. And I think we are hoping to get that one out by the end of the year. And when that happens, I personally am pretty confident that you're going to see a fairly significant improvement in the stability of the extension, basically because you know, it is a total paradigm shift in terms of how we actually run PowerShell. And naturally, you know, it's like, I can't promise perfection, but the big difference is that, unlike with the old implementation, it's a lot easier to work with, to improve, to fix things when they go wrong, because it's a lot easier to understand. So I think that not only is it going to initially fix a bunch of stuff, but it's also going to sort of pay dividends as we continue to develop it, because a key criterion for us is maintenance and maintainability, not just have we fixed the immediate problem. And I think this solves both.
That's awesome to hear. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, we definitely, we've heard this from a lot of folks. I know there were some folks on Twitter that were sort of bringing this back up. I think there was a thread with Chrissy Lemaire and some other folks. I apologize, I'm forgetting exactly who was in there, but it's somewhere where, as Rob said, it's kind of all or nothing, and we're making long-term investments there. VS Code is still our strategy going forward, and we recognize that for the sake of authoring modules and scripts, we have to have something that's stable, especially as folks scale into larger and larger modules and scripts. So really looking forward to that release, Rob. Thanks so much. So working groups was right up at the top of the GitHub issue. And I think it's a great thing for me to provide an update on. So yeah, the WG star labels have shown up, and are many were renamed straight from the existing area star labels. So this is specifically in PowerShell, and I'll just give everyone a look at this real quick. But basically the goal is for all of these area labels to go away. And a couple we did delete because they were largely not being used, and then for all of these to belong to this sort of WG model going forward. I have a bunch of VS Code windows open with all the various places where governance needs to be updated to sort of show the existing show the new process, excuse me. So for instance, we've got a lot of stuff here in the local repository documentation in the maintainers docs. Some of this talks about issue management, so this is getting updated, as well as some stuff around the governance, which is here in the community folder. I may collapse some of these because I think this was always sort of a one-off folder, but this is going to expand to talk about today we have area experts, and these are really going to be the working group members going forward. This is going to be a little bit more involved from a responsibility standpoint, and you're going to hopefully see the folks within the team that we've already assigned to a lot of these working groups start to engage in issues that are within their working group areas. And then we do want to, on a very trial basis, start reaching out to folks probably early next calendar year to invite them on a trial basis to work within these working groups. One of the big things that we're, going to have to push with this is a specific time commitment. And so, working group members will be expected, to participate in, some minimum bar of issues and pull requests, probably totaling roughly about 1 to 2 plus hours per week, which might not seem like a lot, but to have consistent engagement on that front as issues roll in can be very difficult. We know this as committee members as well. So I apologize here. I've been the blocking kind of bottlenecking thing. We've been doing a lot of the planning stuff around 7.2 internally, making sure that all of our ducks in a row are there before we come out with the updates. But we do the roadmap, excuse me. But this is something that's a big priority for me, and definitely something that we think is going to allow us to scale really the popularity of the repo a lot more, because we basically, these issues are just ticking up. And to some extent we want to feel a little bit more confident in saying that there are things that either need to be done outside of PowerShell or that we really don't think fit with the project at all, as well as to kind of accelerate the things that we think probably do fit with the product,
that, you know, folks in the community are willing to contribute, and that ultimately we want to get in as experimental features so that we can see, you know, what kind of impact that has on the overall engine. But, you know, one thing to note here is that we really are working to kind of de-bloat PowerShell overall, right? And this doesn't mean that we plan to remove a bunch of stuff at any given time. We're not, you know, we're very committed to not breaking folks, but at the same time, you know, we can't sort of ship brand new features wholesale into PowerShell, especially when they make sense to you know, exist as modules in the gallery, or that, you know, can be worked on in other pockets of the community or even the PowerShell organization. And so, you know, we're trying to be very tactical about what goes into PowerShell, and to that end, our long-term goal is really to have a set of, you know, sort of guiding principles and a framework for thinking about what belongs in PowerShell and what does not. So, again, I apologize for the delay here, you know, but it is a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving docs to make sure we get everything into the repo, and the RFC process makes sense with everything. And you know, sort of like Rob was saying with the VS Code extension, it's hard to do this half-baked. Because it's just going to confuse folks more, as I've already done, I see, with the with the working group labels. So yeah, look forward to that soon. Working down the list here, what else have we got? I will take those notes later. It's very difficult for me to type and talk, unfortunately. Big thank you to this name that I probably cannot pronounce for his great job modernizing PowerShell codebase, style formatting, forcing analyzer rules. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Ilya, for that thank you shout out. Thomas Nato wanted to talk about these two PowerShell Get v3 issues. Oop, boop, 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 boop.
No, so those issues are actually not related to PowerShell Get v3. Those are three different things.
Oh, I see. He's saying PowerShell Get v3. Let's talk about it, and then these two issues. Got it. So do we want to start with PowerShell Get v3, providing updates there?
Sure. I don't know if Sydney or Amber want to talk about it. Otherwise, I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my update is that we don't have too many updates right now at this point. We've been a little bit more focused on some of the gallery work as of late, but we're still very intent on making good progress on PowerShell Get 3.0, and I'm hoping to see more progress there in the future. But I don't know, Steve, if you were going to say something different.
No, I think that's right. I mean, like, obviously with the major incident that we had, and there's overlap between the engineers working on PowerShell Get and PowerShell Gallery, that has been a focus. Hopefully we'll get another preview of PowerShell Get v3 out this calendar year. And of course, we're going to be quality driven, so I don't know when we'll get to GA, but it will start showing up in 7.2 previews, hopefully this year as well.
Awesome. So the do we plan on? I actually I don't know this. Do we plan on, given the holidays, putting out a 7.2 preview 2 in December, or is that something that?
Well, that's what I was mentioning earlier. Like, I need to validate who's actually going to be around and who's taking time off. So I don't know right now. I need to see who's available.
We will say TBD.
So the answer is maybe, yeah.
Whether a awesome. So goal is to get PowerShell Get into a 7.2 preview ASAP. Great. So do we want to look at these two issues, or do we think?
Yeah, I looked at it. I can just maybe talk about it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is one of the community complaints about a decision we made as a committee about no conditional access members requiring the braces around the variable. And again, I just want to reemphasize, braces around variable names is not a new thing that was introduced. That's an existing construct in PowerShell to help make clarity between what is part of the variable name and what is not. So we also discussed during the RFC time, you know, like the whole question is a question mark a best practice being at the end of a variable name? And I think we did some research, and there are people who do this, so we don't want to break them. So at this point in time, we're not making any changes to this because we don't want to introduce a breaking change for those folks who have decided that a question mark is part of their variable name. We can always revisit this in the future potentially, but I also would say there's a lot of other things that we want to do. I don't know if this is really that big of a pain point that we want to keep revisiting, but I guess let me know. The other one, and there's probably some other related ones here. So Joel Sallow, aka Vex32, did a great PR on an RC that was written a while ago. This is about having a cleanup function. This is also aka known as dispose for scripts. Yeah, so I think based on the risk of this change, we didn't want to take it for 7.1. I would like to see if we can take this, and we actually have a bunch of outstanding PRs, both from Joel and from some other folks that we want to come and have some of the team spend time reviewing and get those in early, potentially as experimental features in 7.2, including this one. So yes, I do want to get this in someday. And then I can just skip on to the next two, which are related, which is about native commands and how they work in PowerShell. So I'll just say that one of the original themes that we have for 7.1 release was to make it work better with native commands. And I think we've made some progress there. We didn't get to everything we wanted. I think that one of the objectives or maybe goals I had in my mind is that, I wanted to solve the problem where if you go look up, learning about kube control, learning about, curl, learning about all these other tools, and you go to some random doc page or blog page, you want to be able to cut and paste that command into PowerShell and just expect it to work. And it's very hard. And it's very hard for a couple of reasons. One is to make it work, we would actually have to make a bunch of breaking changes today in how arguments are parsed. And we're trying to avoid that or find ways to mitigate that as possible. And it's basically proven to be potentially impossible. So we may have to have some harder discussions about what kind of breaking change we're willing to take. The other problem is there are native commands that accept characters that PowerShell misinterprets as PowerShell script. So then that fails. So we have to figure out what to do about that. So we have some ideas, and maybe I'm hoping that we can continue working on this in the 7.2 timeframe. Because again, one of the things I want to make sure people who are not in the PowerShell community understands, like PowerShell as a shell should just work hopefully 95% of the time without you encountering an error. Or worst case, if you get an error, maybe we can have some intelligence that says, hey, maybe you meant to do it this way, or maybe you need to escape these characters. So we'll have to continue to think through that. But yeah, I do want to continue working on that through 7.2. But as noted, it is very hard to do it without a breaking change. And we can't just like make breaking changes left and right here.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's a very common theme, within a lot of these issues, which is, it's sort of whatever the opposite of like breaking changes for thee, but not for me kind of thing. And, a lot of folks want, hey, this is the same with the null conditional, like, hey, break everybody, like, I don't care, I don't do that. Why is that a big deal if you make that breaking change? I know about it, I'm in the issue, my life will be so much better if we just do this break. But there's 99 other breaks that folks are proposing in different places that they'd like to see happen, and you're not aware of any of those, right? Or the figurative you. So it's somewhere that we try to be very, very careful, but this is something where we want to try and look at as many of these as possible early in the life cycle of 7.2 so that we can make these experimental features that can be easily turned off in some of the cases, or in other cases we can just get more data on how folks are impacted. But overall, like, we have a commitment to very, very, very strong stability in PowerShell and making sure not to break folks from version to version as we have this shorter life cycle of 1 year or 2 years if you're hopping LTS to LTS is very important to us. And it's but at the same time we totally feel the pain. Both of these are actually things that I think I ultimately want us to do. I don't know whether 1995 will have to be opt-in behavior for some period of time. I'm a huge proponent of the call native operator. I think it's something we should do. So not necessarily one or the other here. I think both of these can be done and will both be beneficial. But it's somewhere where we do have to continue having the conversation. So thanks for bringing it to our attention, Keith. I think 261. Did I miss 261 here? This was an RFC on native command air handling. Yes, this we definitely want to do. This is the set-E scenario, and I think we'll probably get started on this one pretty soon. This is very well understood at this point.
Well, it's understood in terms of what we want. Complexity happens when we actually try to implement it.
Yes, of course. Behaviorally, we understand that it will not make any significant breaking changes the way that we've proposed the design. Will there be a day when we'll be able to copy paste random code from the internet like dig 888 to PowerShell and just work? This is same as 1995. Yep, hear you. I think everything we just said, yep, beat it by a few seconds totally. So I think that is well understood here. Specifically about question marks, valid characters, and names. Yep, we would be looking back into the issue. I appreciate it getting reopened. That's definitely, and yeah, this was the big thing. And to be honest, this kind of did sway me on this issue a little bit. I think we still want to have the conversation, and we can make it a priority in our next committee meeting. But the someone did do the analysis on our behalf in the corpus and determined that there was like 2 uses or something of a question mark in a variable name. So I think it's something that we could possibly do as an experimental feature, early in 7.2 again. But I think it's tricky. Like we gotta that's not a zero cost thing, and it's not something that I think is like a huge priority to us right now. So I don't want to guarantee that that's happening, but it's definitely something that could be done given that the corpus shows that low usage. Cool. I want to pop over to the chat. J. Cole didn't like the light theme. Is the work directly with the extension or within editor services? This was a question to you, Rob, with regards to the reimplementation work.
Editor services. Almost all of the implementation of the PowerShell extension for VS Code lies in editor services. Very little is done in TypeScript. It's basically a thin client around editor services. And I mean, depending on the whether the question is just out of curiosity or whether it's about basically that means that this issue affects anything that's based on PowerShell editor services. And also this fix for the issue would fix anything that reuses PowerShell editor services. It's not a uniquely VS Code driven thing. And that's a deliberate choice, by the way, in our architecture. We would love to see, we're actually really happy to see other clients use PowerShell editor services, and we want to make it a really robust platform for other editor clients.
Do you want to say just one thing on top of that is that we usually still want issues in VS Code PowerShell just because that's kind of what customers usually think of when they think PowerShell extension. So
yes, shepherding issues between the 2 repos is work that doesn't, it's easier to bypass. So if you have an issue, definitely post it into the VS Code PowerShell repo. I know it's not always the perfect place for it, but that's the easiest place for it in terms of especially visibility to others.
Great point to raise there. Thank you, Tyler. And thank you, Rob. That's good to know that we're essentially helping the community here. Cool. Is this work directly? Oh, we already answered that one. Michael Lombardi says something about the latest version of PowerShell Get v3 on the gallery broke the DSC implementation. I don't know exactly what that's referring to. I would love to get more details on that or a link to that.
Let me just add one thing. I don't know the details of that, but I do know that Amber spent some time adding the DSC resources into the latest preview of v3. So I would say double check that you're not using the older ones, perhaps.
Okay. Is someone going to tweet the link to the community call minutes? I don't think enough people know about this. It would be something that would probably be featured on the PowerShell.org. So if by minutes you mean the notes themselves, we're doing a very poor job of getting the recordings and the notes up into the repository after the call kicks off. This is a difficulty for me going into a bunch of Thursday meetings right after I come out of this call, and it just falls right into the vortex. So I apologize for that. If you mean the issue itself, here where we actually ask people to add topics and questions, we do tweet about this typically the day before on Wednesday. We've been asked to create this issue a little bit earlier. I think we've been successful in September and October, especially thanks to Ryan Yates for pinging us to get that issue open. November's been a bit of more of a struggle month, I think, for me in particular, just with everything going on. So this wasn't created until yesterday. You could see 20 hours ago, and we were tweeting. So as really my apologies there. If we do end up having a community call for December, which is unclear to me right now, third Thursday, like if folks with a good memory will know that I, got confused about the date of Thanksgiving in November, and then made comments about the second week versus the third week, and this month was just definitely a mess. So as my apologies. But if we end up having one here on the 17th, I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not yet, but we will definitely try and get that issue created, hopefully within the very latest the second week of December here. But yeah, definitely keep eyes peeled on Twitter. We do tweet about that when the issue gets created, and to remind people that the community call is happening. So Keith says maybe the question mark dot should not be added to the language because folks that don't use question mark and variable names will get tripped up on this, as it won't be a syntax error. It just won't behave as they expect at runtime. Foo question mark dot length here. Yeah, it's a very good point to raise. Definitely understand where you're coming from here, Keith. And Michael Lombardi, do you have defined criteria for how you assess compat breaks as risks? Informally, yes. Not written down anywhere, which of course gives us the wiggle room to break our own rules, as many of you know. I've had it in my backlog to publish a blog on how I think about breaking changes for a very long time, but at a very high level, it's essentially, a couple different factors. What is the significance of the break? If you get broken, how bad does it hurt? How easy is it to fix once you've been hurt? And then how many folks do we think are going to get broken? What's the prevalence of the breakage? And then maybe there's a sort of a sub criteria there, which is how easy is it for you to know what the fix is based on having been broken? And so in some cases the break is partial, or maybe it results in a non-terminating error when we otherwise would have seen a terminating error, or otherwise would have not seen an error at all. And we think that for most folks that won't break them, or we think that there's something that's, while technically a breaking change is extremely unlikely for someone to hit. Now a lot of this thinking, or at least the breakdown of the criteria, has been published formally, and I will link to that here. But it really is just to sort of categorize the sorts of breaking changes that exist. It doesn't really give you an idea of how we think about whether or not to go forward with that breakage. And so I think, is that in maintainers? Nope, it's in.
Can I add to that briefly?
Yeah.
Just in terms of like talking about the severity of a break. You can drill into that a little bit, because I personally think of syntax breaking changes versus like semantic or like runtime breaking changes as something of a dichotomy. There are sort of two, things can be in one basket or the other. And in terms of the severity, a syntax change in PowerShell will either cause a syntax error, which means that if you write a script which previously worked and now has a syntax error, then there's no way to like change that script to incorporate the new thing, which will both like work in the new syntax and the old. you now have to write 2 scripts, and you have to use a 3rd script to choose which of those 2 scripts to run, because a syntax error occurs before any of the script gets run. It occurs at parse time, and so that's a much more severe kind of error. So if you do something like add an argument or a switch to a command, then you can at runtime use splatting to dynamically decide whether that switch works. So that's a runtime issue, and you can kind of paper over a breaking change like that. But if you change how PowerShell decides what a command looks like, and suddenly certain commands are no longer allowed, then there's no if statement you can write in your script to make it work in both a new and an old, pre and post that break. So in my mind, that is a much more severe break to make, and that's the kind of breaking change that that occurs when you do something like add new operators or change the way variables are parsed by PowerShell. And not only is it a breaking change for PowerShell, it's also a breaking change for tooling like PS Script Analyzer, because PS Script Analyzer relies on PowerShell's parser to tell it what the abstract syntax tree looks like. And if you see 2 different abstract syntax trees for the same script, because you're using 2 different versions of the PowerShell parser that are differentiated by this breaking change, then even the tooling cannot see through the change that was made.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head for even just one column of sort of the kinds of breaking changes that we have to think about within PowerShell. But it just really shows how, there's sort of this ripple effect, right? And I think a lot of folks just don't realize that something that they just want fixed can very quickly cascade into, as Rob was saying, like the tooling, into folks that are in mixed version environments, mixed operating system environments. How do you begin to paper over these things? And as you collect breaking changes like this, if they're prevalent enough, it can be very, very difficult for people to maintain scripts that work across versions, or tools that work across versions. So again, it's something that I've wanted to think about more from a or discuss with folks more at a high level. I think one of the other aspects of this is that I left out here is that the actual benefits of the break, which is something that surprisingly gets forgotten a lot of the time. Folks want to make breaks in order to say, hey, this is more consistent with things we're doing elsewhere in the language. But the reality is that it doesn't really, the benefit is often not really significant enough to justify any downside to the break. And so, there's some that we reject out of hand, not because we think it's going to be extremely painful for anyone who's broken, but just because there's absolutely no pain that's justified given the lack of an upside. So I don't know, there's a bunch more questions here I want to get to in the chat, but I think this is a really good conversation and it's one I want to have further. Any ETA on PowerShell Get v3 handling authenticated repositories in a user-friendly manner or supporting v3 repositories?
So no ETA. I believe that's still part of the v3.0 work item list. So
why is update help in 7.x updates help in 5.1? Do we know about this? I don't think that's occurring.
It shouldn't be the case, but
Say that again.
so the question doesn't totally parse, but it says, why is update help in 7x updates help in 5.1?
If your PS module path includes the Windows PowerShell module path, it updates those modules.
oh, that's true. Yeah.
Is this question in reference to the PS readline issue? In that case, what should
I'm not sure.
It's certainly related, but yes, it has to do with your PS module path. Update help is going to try to update everything in your PS module path.
So are you saying that for which modules then? Like I don't understand what's 7x that would be in your 5.1 module path.
No, it's the other way
The other
around.
way.
You're in
The other way.
you're
You
in
have 5.1.
7x.
Yeah.
Yeah, from 7.
Oh, I see.
Yes, we add in 7.0, right? We give access to the 5.1 PS module path at the end. So if you run update help from 7x, that will update the 5.1 help.
But it should do it according
anyway.
to the help info URIs that are in those manifests, right?
Yeah, but
So
like there are some 5.1
does.
modules not in 7x.
Yeah, it does. It's downloading the proper help, but I think it's unexpected for people who think they're just going to update the help in the current version.
Yeah, but I can't see a reason why you wouldn't want to get the latest version of the correct help for a module. So I see why it could be unexpected, but at the same time, it doesn't feel undesirable to me. So I'd love to get more info there if there's something that's less desirable there. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we've no intern, but you know, we do have. There's a lot of work that I do. I think that is being slowly disseminated out to more of the PMs on the team. We do have you know, a team of 4 now working on PowerShell and Cloud Shell and OpenSSH. So you know, Danny Martins works primarily on the Cloud Shell SSH efforts, but both Jason and Sydney work on, you know, PowerShell and PowerShell tooling, and it's been really fantastic to have 3 whole people working from the PM side of things on just PowerShell stuff. And so you know, I think you've already seen over the last year and a half more PM engagement from you know, the PowerShell overall, but more and more of these things are going to start to sort of trickle around to the rest of the team here, and it's definitely going to mean that we have a better grip on things like creating these meetings, or, you know, getting the notes and video recording posted. So I appreciate everyone's patience, but I think it does speak to Microsoft's sort of commitment to PowerShell, that we're just continuing to invest in more people there, and to, you know, grow the overall team. So it's been really fun. Any more questions trickle in the Q&A or the issue here?
No, I don't see anything.
Awesome. Well, we're at 29. That puts us at a great time to cut it here. Oh, staged. Oh, there was.
No, a lot of them are just related to the stuff we talked about.
Oh, okay. Then
Like
PHP work code is broken on almost every minor revision. I feel like you were the
Talking about-
extremes of
talking
the
about how
other
we
side
handle
and the best
compatibility.
balances. Yeah. Yep. The you know, we definitely don't want to break like PHP. And thank you, Keith, for you know, being happy about maintaining that. But yes, the staged approach is kind of where we're at, and there is an issue actually on how to handle obsolescence. That of course, you know, folks here say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you warned on usage of ? Yes, it would be. So maybe it would be great if you could hop into a pull request here in RFC on how we handle obsolescence, as we have a number of folks who believe that warnings are not a good thing here, which, you know, fine opinion to have, but I personally think that we're significantly underutilizing warnings as ways to signal future breaking changes. So, you know, this is definitely one that if you care about breaking changes and obsolescence, hop in here and you know, check this doc out for sure. But thanks, folks. Really appreciate it. Hope to have you know, a December 1, but we will let you know on Twitter. Keep an eye out. And if we don't see you, have a fantastic Thanksgiving to those here in the States. Fantastic holidays around the world, and hope you're all safe and sound. You know, with everything going on, and just yeah, have a great rest of 2020.
Thanks,
Talk to you
everyone.
soon, folks.
Bye.